Paul Fisher, who now works at head office, was training to be a manager in 1984, when he was asked to walk the tunnels of the Northern Line. Part of his training was to understand the procedures for all of the different tasks at first hand. And one such job Paul was required to experience was track walking, a job that involves walking on your own along the tunnels between stations after the trains have stopped, with just a torch for light.
During the walk, I think that was between Overland and Stockwell stations, I came across this clearing, bigger piece of tunnel, and there was a guy working there. And what struck me was that he had one of these old oil-type, gassy tilly lamps, used to call them. And I remember thinking that I'm sure these have been done away with. Safety reasons, I guess, and everybody had battery torches nowadays. So I said to this guy, and I remember he looked old to me then, he was probably my age now. I said, I'm surprised you got one of those old lamps. And I forget what he said exactly, but something along the lines of he liked it better than the battery lamps. I never thought much about it. I asked him, what is this place, this clearing? He said, oh, this is South Island Places. And I forget what he explained what he did. And that was it, really. A quick chat, and I continued walking down the tunnel to the next station, which was Stockwell, and that was where the end of my track walk was. So I phoned this chap up, told him my name, and said I've just done a walk from here to there. And I was now clear of the track. He said, fine, okay. And just by chance, I asked him what the other guys were doing up South Island Place. I thought I'd drop that in, be a bit clever, you know. And he said, what other guy? Oh, I just spoke to a guy up at South Island Place, he called it. He said, I haven't got anybody booked in my logs tonight to be working there. So, well, there is somebody working, I just spoke to him. If you're sure that you saw somebody down there, we certainly don't have anybody booked in for that piece of track. We'll have to search the tunnel. So it's a tunnel search, had to go ahead. So I've gone back into the tunnel and he's come the other way. And after about 20 minutes, we met in the middle. And this old fellow with the lamp is nowhere to be seen. It's a little unnerving, because it didn't kind of make sense. And the search had taken a long time. And as a result of that, the first trains had to be held up, which is not a popular thing to do. And I remember the worst part about it was that my trainer was there interviewing me in kind of a semi-disciplinary sense, because I'd delayed the train and he wanted to know why. So I told him this story. And I remember he gave me a very old-fashioned look. He said, you know about South Island Place and the ghost stories there? So I said, no, I'm sure he didn't believe me. And this was getting worse by the minute. And he said that there was a myth about some old guy had been hit by a train and killed donkeys years ago, I've no idea when. And there was supposed to be a ghost down there. He said he gave me a very sideways look, and I'm sure he thought I was winding him up. So I kept stum ever since.
In the summer of 2000, the line controller noticed a man standing on a platform at Liverpool Street in central London. This was particularly unusual, as it was 2 o'clock in the morning. The station was closed, and there were no contractors scheduled to be there. On shift that night was Steve Coates, a station supervisor with 23 years of experience. The line controller rang Steve and asked him to investigate.
I asked him if he'd like me to go and have a look. He said he would, as he'd seen somebody wearing white overalls standing in the entrance to the eastbound tunnel. I went down to the central line. I couldn't see anybody as I approached the eastbound tunnel. There was nobody there. I looked into the tunnel, I looked all around. There was nobody present. I walked through to the bottom of the escalators and used the telephone to call the line controller. And I explained to him that I'd carried out an investigation. I'd looked through into the tunnel. I couldn't see anybody there. He said, but this guy was next to you. How could you not see him? So I said, okay, I'll go back and have another look. So I walked through, I looked all around there. Again, I saw nobody. I came back to the telephone, called the line controller and said, there honestly is nobody here. I've looked around. And he said, but I'm telling you, I can see you on my CCTV. You were standing right next to him. I said, are you sure it's not just a blip on your CCTV? And he said, no, the guy was right next to you. And I said, I can promise you there was nobody there. So he said, okay, all right, fine, thanks very much. As I turned and walked back onto the eastbound platform, to my left there was a bench, and on that bench was a white pair of paper overalls. At the time, it made a chill go down my spine. Had anybody walked out of the tunnel while I was on the telephone, I would have seen them. They would have passed the area that I was in. And I certainly did not see anybody wearing white overalls or see anybody placing any overalls on that bench.
Liverpool Street. Liverpool Street Station was opened in February 1874, and before it was even built, there were rumours that the area was haunted by a girl named Rebecca Griffiths, who could be heard screaming at night. Rebecca was supposedly a patient from the nearby Bethlehem Lunatic Asylum, and when she died, she was buried nearby without the coin she constantly held onto. To this day, it's thought she still haunts the area looking for the coin. King's Cross, St Pancras. In 1987, a horrific fire swept through King's Cross Street Pancras Station, which is the biggest interchange station on the London Underground. The fire killed 31 people and injured 100, and the damage was so severe that part of the station had to be rebuilt and didn't reopen until 1989. Then in May 1998, a young woman aged around 25 was spotted kneeling at the side of the station's corridor. She had her arms outstretched and was sobbing uncontrollably. A passerby stopped to see if the woman was okay, but as she started to speak to her, someone walked straight through the woman as if she wasn't there. The young woman then disappeared. This was a one-off incident, and the woman has never been seen since. But many have wondered, could she have been connected to the terrible fire in 1987? What do you think? Farringdon Station. If you visit Farringdon Station, it's not unusual to hear the screams of a young girl who was never laid to rest. Long before the station was built, the site was slumland, frequented by criminals and home to notorious gambling dens. One poor young girl unfortunately became a victim of the surroundings she lived in. Anne Naylor was a 13-year-old trainee hatmaker who lived with her mother. She was taken in as an apprentice by a mother and daughter who ran a local business. Anne was treated badly. She was tortured and starved, and after one horrific beating, she sadly died. The mother and daughter panicked and concealed her body in the attic. But as it started to decompose, they knew they would have to move her. So they cut her up into small pieces and started throwing her remains into the fireplace. However, the pair hadn't bargained for the foul odour of burning flesh, so they threw what was left of her body into an open sewer close to where Farringdon Station was later built. The corpse was found the following night, but the coroner ruled that the girl had not been murdered. The two women got away, and would have remained that way if they had not blurted out details of the murder a few years later, and they were soon tried and sentenced to death. The crime was largely forgotten about until Farringdon Station was built many years later, and it's said that if you stand on the platform at night, the screams of Anne Naylor can be heard echoing through the tunnels.